Imagine Celine Dion has a podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Shall we go for it?
Oh my god, did you hear? Did you hear?
Did you hear?
Oh my god, guys.
Jayke has a podcast.
I can't believe Jayke has a podcast.
Oh my god, Jayke has a podcast.
Oh my god, you guys!
What is up, everybody? My name is Jayke Workman, and this is Oh My Pod, you guys, a musical theater and pop culture podcast. You guys, this week I got to see one Broadway show and one off-Broadway show, and let me tell you, they could not have been more different, and I loved both of them so much. The first was a preview of the new production of New York, New York on Broadway. And the show is directed by Susan Stroman and choreographed by Susan Stroman. So you already know it is an over-the-top musical. And it's currently playing the St. James Theater. And it stars Colton Ryan and Anna Uzele. And y'all, let me tell you, Mr. Colton Ryan is serving it up on a platter. He can sing, he can dance, his acting's phenomenal. You may have seen him on TV or in movies before. I recognized him from The Girl from Plainville, which was a TV show that he was on, but he is incredible in this show, and he plays so beautifully off of Queen Anna Uzele, who sings the house down boots in this show. I cannot recommend it enough. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's still in previews, so things are definitely subject to change before their official opening. They've had some help from Sir Lin-Manuel Miranda to tweak things and add additional lyrics to John Kander and Fred Ebb's beautiful, already existing songs. But you guys, keep an eye on Mr. Colton Ryan, because he is something else, and I would not be surprised if he was nominated for a Tony for this performance. It is that good. And the show also features some really beautiful performances by Clyde Alves and Emily Skinner. I mean, Clyde is one of the best dancers there is on Broadway, and he just so happens to be married to one of the other best dancers on Broadway, Miss Robin Herder. So I truly am in awe of this cast and this production. It was gorgeous. You guys, the next show that I was so lucky to see was the off-Broadway production of Titanic, the musical, at the Daryl Roth Theater. And y'all, I cannot describe to you how much I freaking loved this show. It stars Marla Mindell as Celine Dion, and she also co-wrote the show with her co-star Constantine Rozzulli, who plays Jack, and he is unbelievable. And also, the show features the incomparable Miss Carrie St. Louis as Rose. And if you guys stay tuned in the next few weeks, we may or may not have a special appearance by Miss St. Louis on the pod, which I'm so excited about. But you guys, seriously, this show was unbelievably funny. It was quick, charming, it was raunchy, and the singing is out of this universe. It's ridiculous. Also, Marla's impression of Celine Dion is as if Miss Dion is actually in the room. It's so brilliant, and she's throwing new things in every single night. It's clear that her improv is so tuned into what's happening in the world around her. It's brilliant, and I can't recommend it enough. It's also just gay. So run to the Daryl Roth. You can catch the show through September. It's brilliant. And you guys, speaking of Titanic, we gotta dive into this week's BroadwayWorld recap. It was just announced that on April 24th, the company of Titanic and the people at the Daryl Roth are throwing a benefit concert called All Aboard, and it's going to benefit the ACLU's Drag Defense Fund, which is in response to this crazy number of bills and pieces of legislation that are going up against the LGBTQIA plus community, but specifically targets drag queens and the art of drag. So this is a really important benefit concert. The lineup includes Rosé, who currently stars as Victor Garber in the show. Marsha will be there, and she's currently on season 15 of RuPaul's Drag Race. Drag Race alums Jackie Cox and Alexis Michelle will make appearances. Lauren Allred from The Greatest Showman will be there. New York City drag legends Kiki Balchange, Castrata, and Laguna Blue will all make appearances. And friend of the pod and brilliant queer activist Marty Cummings will be there as well. So get your tickets now. I mean, you guys, this is an extremely important cause, and all of the money is going to go to the American Civil Liberties Union. We have to work together to fight these absurd drag bans, which honestly are nothing more than a thinly veiled way to target trans people. And we can't have this anymore. We just, it's too dangerous. So get your tickets. It's going to be a really brilliant night. Next, we have to talk about a show that's being written by the one and only Titus Burgess. You may know him from his run on The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt as Titus Andromedon, but he is a seasoned Broadway vet with credits like Jersey Boys and originating the role of Sebastian in The Little Mermaid. And now he has written music and lyrics for a new musical that's based on the Whitney Houston film The Preacher's Wife, and it's going to be premiering at the Alliance Theater in their next season. So I am very excited to see what he has created, and who knows, maybe we will see it come to Broadway. Also, you guys, we have got to talk about it. Sweeney Todd, the Broadway revival, officially opened this week to rave reviews. And honestly, I mean, who's shocked? It stars Josh Groban and Annalee Ashford as Sweeney and Mrs. Lovett. So I'm not particularly surprised that these reviews are incredible, but it only makes me more excited to see it. My dear friend Galliana is making her Broadway debut in the show. I have loved this score for so long. I think it's brilliant. And the production photos look just stunning. I can't wait to get in that theater. You guys, this was the BroadwayWorld recap. Oh my pod, you guys, I am so excited to welcome my next guest to the show. She is a fierce performer, and she is a fierce ally to the queer community. Please welcome Miss Abby Smith.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm posing like as if people could see my faces that I'm making.
They can picture it in their minds.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Where are you
How
calling
you?
from?
I'm actually in my parents' house in Evanston, Illinois, outside of Chicago, where I have, surprise, relocated to Chicago.
Yes.
A couple months ago. And I'm going to move in my own place in a couple weeks, but I'm still at the parents' for now.
Fierce. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So obviously I'm just sad that I don't get to see you as frequently as I would like to. But tell me about that leap from New York City to Chicago. What led you there?
Well, I've been thinking about doing it for a while. We all who live in New York know that it's a really hard way of life. It's so expensive. I feel like it's only gotten more expensive. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to do when you don't want roommates anymore. I lived the roommate life for a while, but it's even harder. And I book work, and last year I was really lucky and had a really nice year, but even so, I don't know, it's just kind of unsustainable. Plus, I love to drive. I love to go to Target. I love, all of the things that suburban life allows for. I really miss, and I kind of, in the pandemic, I was not in New York City for all of 2020. So I was kind of like, I really do like having open space and more independence with a car. So it's been kind of in my brain. And then I went back to the city for 2021 and I was like, yeah, it's too hard. I think I'm ready for a change.
Nice.
So here I am. And I have several friends that live here in Chicago and are working actors. They work all the time. It's a great theater community out here. So I just kind of hit the ground running in January. I've been going to a lot of auditions and callbacks. So I'm excited. I feel like I've already started to get some ground here.
Yay. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
thank you.
it's a really fun reminder that you don't necessarily have to be in this crazy fucking place to be a working actor, like you said. And there's some stigma and weirdness, I think, around she left, or if you're not in New York, you're not doing it. And it's like, no,
right.
we're
I know.
Still
I
here.
like to Right. I like to try to put that out of my brain if I have, but I actually don't even think that I have it because honestly, when I met some friends, I did a show in Maine with some people from Chicago 10 years ago. And they were like, oh yeah, we live in Chicago. We work all the time. I was like, I'm so jealous. You don't have to like live in a shoebox and take the nasty train every day. And not that, anyway, the train is wonderful. I love it in New York, but
no, it's horrible.
Yeah. Well, it's worse here. So
oh, great.
You stick with a car. Yeah. Anyway, I'm thankful to be here.
Well, good. I'm so glad. And you look so happy. I just miss you. It's so good to see your face, even though it's over video. So, we obviously met in Aspen, Colorado. I had the pleasure of being in Gypsy with you. Tell me about your experience with like regional shows like that. Obviously that was not your first time playing Mazeppa in the show.
It wasn't.
But you've kind of worked all over the place. You are a booked and blessed lady.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I didn't move to the city until 2008, but I kind of started doing some regional theater. I was lucky enough, like you said, to do Mazeppa about 10 years ago. Actually, those friends that I know from Chicago were in Gypsy with me.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. So I just kind of started working. I worked in Maine. I worked in... Recently, I've worked in Lancaster a couple of times at the Fulton Theater. I worked in Oklahoma City, where I went to grad school. Last year, I also got to do a show at the Arkansas Rep. I love doing regional theater because you kind of get to know the community that's there. And then, inevitably, I know someone that lives nearby, and they come and see the show. Actually, when I was in Aspen this summer... there was a gal who I went to college with who I have not seen since college. And she was like, I'm coming to see your show. I was like, oh my God, that's so crazy.
Yeah, wild.
I love kind of getting to connect and inviting people that I haven't seen in a long time to kind of see what I do. Oh, I worked at a theater in Michigan, which is near my sister. And I'm actually going to be doing Kinky Boots there again this summer. So that's exciting.
Oh my gosh, yay! Well, I got to see you in Kinky Boots at the Fulton, which was so fun. I was so excited to get to see that show.
I love it.
But yeah, that's so exciting. I think having that level of comfortability in being so mobile is really important as a performer, because people often forget that, when you work or live in New York, you're auditioning to leave the city. Unless you're auditioning for Broadway or off Broadway or somewhere right in the region, you're not, you're auditioning and hoping that you're going to sublet your place and be gone for 5 months or whatever. Where was...
Save up some money.
Yeah, exactly. Where was home base for you then before New York, while you were auditioning for regional stuff?
So I actually went to college. I moved back to Houston. I mostly grew up in Houston, Texas. After undergrad, I went back to Houston and worked there for a few years at a theater called the AD Players. And then I went to grad school. And after grad school is when I decided to move to New York. But yes, I mean, for the last 15 years, New York has always been my home base. So anytime that I did regional theater, it's been from New York. But yeah, like you said, I actually really loved getting to stay in my own apartment. When you get booked in a show, you usually get your own apartment, and a lot of times it's nicer than the one I had in New York. So it's I get to do my show routine, make myself breakfast in the morning, warm up, do my show. And then, when you're in a cast, that kind of becomes your family for the length of the contract. And I love meeting new people and finding out whatever is going on in that town. In Aspen, we had a great time. We did some hiking.
Yes.
We were at the pool. It was a fun time.
That was so fun. I mean, we were particularly lucky with the the surroundings that we had in Aspen. So that only contributed to the experience.
I mean, that's another thing is a lot of times, theaters are in sort of resort areas. So you get to go to a lot of cool places.
Yes.
Any place that can sustain, a subscriber base is going to be a cool area, an artsy community a lot of times.
Totally. Well, and I knew from the moment that I met you that we were going to be fast friends, but getting to just go out in Aspen and do the silly hiking things and everything was the best part. So tell me about... your undergrad, was that also in Texas?
That was in Arkansas. That was at a school called Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas. And it's a small liberal arts Church of Christ affiliated college, which is the denomination that I grew up in. So that's where I went. That's where all my family went. It's kind of like, if your family goes there, that's where you go.
Sure.
But they certainly didn't specialize in musical theater or theater. And I majored in music because, I knew I liked to sing, but even when I started college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do.
Gotcha.
But I loved doing shows, so I minored in theater. And then after school, I was still afraid to move to New York, even though, ironically, at the time, my parents lived in New York City after I graduated from undergrad. I know, but I was like, I don't know. I won't be able to compete with the Broadway people. So I was like, I'll move back to Houston. So, I just got an internship at this theater and moved back to Houston because that's what was comfortable for me. But it wasn't until after I went to grad school at OCU, Oklahoma City University, which has such alums as Kristen Chenoweth and Kelly O'Hara.
Yes.
And OCU was really good about bringing alumni or different people from the business in New York City to the school so we can have master classes and kind of see what it would be like. And they're better about, educating you on what to do once you get to the city. And so the mystery was washed away from it a little bit for me. And besides that, all my friends at OCU were going to move to New York. So I was like, well, I guess I can move to New York. My parents do live there. So that works out.
Yeah.
So that's, so OCU really kind of afforded me the comfortability to go ahead and take the plunge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and tell me about your parents. If I'm not mistaken, they're both actors, or not actors, but artists in their own
Yes, they are.
way.
Yeah, so my dad is a voice teacher. He mostly trains opera singers, and my mom is a pianist. So I've been around, opera and musical theater my whole life, and certainly music. My senior year of high school actually is when they moved to New York City. He started teaching at Juilliard in the opera program.
Fierce.
And and he was there for, I want to say, 12 years. So I lived with them for a couple of years, and then actually they moved to here. They moved here to Evanston, and so now he's teaching at Northwestern, and they've been here about 12 years. Yeah, so it's so nice to have them as my supporters. They are huge supporters. They have always, come to every single thing I've been in. And also, especially right now, being with my mom, she's just like a built-in accompanist. I'm just like, hey,
yeah.
can you play this for me real quick? It's really nice.
That's so
But also,
lucky.
even if we just feel like, singing and playing together, we'll just be like, hey, let's just sing something. It's really fun. It's great
I love
to
that.
have musician parents.
Yeah, that's so special. And I think that it only must have contributed to your affinity for not just musical theater, but just the appreciation of the arts in general. And I want to, not to get too personal, but I do want to ask you about, at what point in your life or in your upbringing did your awareness of the queer community come into play? Because I really do have to say that, you are one of my friends who I feel just so embraced by in terms of my queerness, and you're so vocal about it. So was that always the case? Were your parents open to it?
I love that. Yeah, actually, that makes me feel really good that you said that, because it's certainly my intention to be that way. So I'm glad that comes off. Actually, because my dad was a voice teacher my whole life, he had queer students that were my babysitters, and I knew they were gay, and we were always just kind of like, yeah, whatever, they're around. I don't remember talking about it a lot, but I did grow up in a Christian tradition.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested in.
That
balance.
That usually is kind of like, what their general line is: hate the sin, love the sinner.
Yep, I know it well.
Which never sat well with me. But I remember actually in college having a conversation with my parents, being like, do you you knew that, you know, and I listed a few of their students that were my friends' babysitters. I was like, you know, you knew that they were gay. Like, what do you think about that? Because I had a couple of friends in college that were gay, and which was a no-no, of course, at my Christian university.
Sure.
And I was just kind of like, but I know that they're not choosing that life. It's just who they are. So how do you deal with that? And they were like, well, you know, we just love them. And I think at the time their minds were changing as well. You know, this was 25 years ago, probably. And then actually one of the biggest turning points for me was when I was at OCU, and I was in a dance class with a friend of mine named Alec Bell. Shout out to Alec.
Hey,
I haven't
Alec.
talked to him in years. He lives in California now. But Alec also grew up in Arkansas with conservative Christian family. And I remember getting coffee with Alec, and he just kind of came out to me and said, you know, this is who I am. I've known it for a long time. And I was good friends with him already. And I was just like, that was kind of the last straw for me. I was like, all right, done deal. Being gay is not wrong. You are who you are, you know, when you're born, and I am going to stop, you know, pretending that it's a sin, and I'm just going to like love anyone that identifies that way. And it's, you know, it's only gotten better since then.
Yeah.
I've only gotten more accepting.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's funny too, just because like even like the most surface level things that like we very first like bonded over were like talking about Drag Race and like so much queer culture. And I want you to know, and people in the same position as you to know that it really is important, and it means a lot to the queer community to have such strong allies, especially now when things, I mean, you even shared on your social media like this past week about the art form of drag and how it's not harmful, and it's kind of insane that
it's actually the opposite. Like I just, these people that are making laws outlawing drag, I'm just like, you don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I've watched Drag Race, not from the beginning, but I don't know, probably from the 5th or 6th season. And if you invest the time to watch it and realize, like when the queens are putting on their makeup before the final runway at the end, there's always some kind of kiki and, you know, come to Jesus moment. And I'm like, listen to what they're saying. This is their lives. This is so important to them, and not it's not a covering up, it's a revealing of who you are.
Yeah.
Like it's so important for people to do this, and it's life-changing. And how can you watch this show and not love everyone?
I mean, the whole like basis of the show is like everybody say love. Like that's the whole thing. So it's really, really frustrating and obviously dangerous that we are seeing so much legislature surrounding drag in such a negative light. But
it's just fear of what they don't know. They don't know what they're talking about.
Totally.
And so they think it's wrong.
Totally. But all of that to say, thank you. And it goes noticed. And it's funny that you mentioned, you know, OC, what is it? OCU?
OCU.
Yeah,
Oklahoma
OCU
City University.
and Kristen Chenoweth, because she actually just showed up post a performance of Chicago to chat on stage with Jinx. Yeah, and it, you know, in a similar vein, they were just speaking of how, like, regardless of your religious affiliation or how you grew up, you can love. You can show love to everyone regardless. And I just love that. So... yeah,
I do too.
But switching gears a little bit, I must talk about your star turn in the original Broadway company of the Spongebob Musical on Broadway.
Yes, Mrs. Puff was the star of the SpongeBob Musical, contrary to popular belief.
She sure was. When I fucking watched the recording, I was like, that's my friend! But tell me, what was that like to not just make your Broadway debut, but to be in the rehearsal room with like Tina Landau and like Chris Gattelli and like these crazy well-known people?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty cool. Even from the auditions, Tina Landau, for those who don't know, for those who haven't studied her viewpoint technique in
yes.
College, she is this like DIY guru. Like she's all about divisive theater and not divide. What is it called? Devised theater, not divisive.
Divisive theater. Tina wants us to hate each other.
She's really for the divide in our country right now. Yes, devised theater, and so she's so creative, and she's all about using the people in the room to make what we see on stage, and. You know, good on Nickelodeon for choosing her because that's what the Spongebob musical became. So even in the audition, I remember going to my first callback, and it was a dance call. And the first thing we did was like have a dance party. She just put some music on, and we were all in a circle, and we started dancing. And then if you could do like some cool trick, you came out into the middle and did it. And I was like, what is this? I've never had this kind of an audition before.
Yeah.
And then she put on some different music. She was like, okay, you're moving under the water and there's a giant volcano that's erupting behind you. Of course it made sense later, knowing the plot of the story.
Right.
But we were like, okay. And she was like, now move in slow motion. And we kind of did that. It felt like theater games for an audition, which was so strange. And then we did eventually actually do some dance steps so they could see that we could learn dancing. But then, yeah, and Chris Catelli was there too. And Chris is also really creative. And I feel like his movement is always so organic. It's just appropriate with whatever, you know, the genre or the type of music that is. And he can do anything. And another thing I love about Chris too is that if there's something that you don't feel right about, or like it feels weird in your body, or if it's a little too hard, he's like, great, let's change it. He's not precious about anything. And he knows that a number of things can work. So that's amazing too. It was amazing to be in the room with them creating this show. We worked on it for a couple of months in the spring of 2016, which was 7 years ago now. It's so crazy. And then we did our out-of-town tryout here in Chicago. I had never done a new musical before, so all the changes was like kind of a mindfuck, having to deal with all those kinds of things. And then even from Chicago to Broadway, which there was a year in between, there were a lot more changes, new numbers added and some taken out or some changed. And then we even did another workshop in between. So it was, and even before I joined, there was like, I want to say 8 years of process before that.
Sure.
So to find out about how that all goes down was crazy. It was definitely the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life.
Wow.
But I also, because of that, feel so proud that I created this thing, or I helped create this thing, and it was so special. It turned out to be so great.
Yeah.
You know, not all new musicals are great, but I really feel like, I know I'm biased, but I feel like the SpongeBob musical is great.
Oh my God. It is so great. And I have to be honest, I was skeptical. I mean, many were, but you know, when you first hear,
I was too.
It's like SpongeBob the musical, I was like, oh, really? But it turned out to be like one of the most inventive and like original things that I had seen in so long. And that is so true. I don't think that many people know just how long the road to Broadway is for a new musical. I mean, I think I've only worked like legitimately on one new musical, which was The Flamingo Kid, and I was swinging that show. So not only were we getting, you know, new pages every day and like strike that and add this in and whatever, but I was also like, where are you going? Who has this line now?
Oh my God!
Where do I go? I was covering 11
so many different tracks.
Yeah, I covered 11 people in the show, and so like, you know, there's just not enough highlighter colors in the world to do that.
I know.
But
my favorite is when they're like, okay, we're gonna learn this new number. We're not gonna put it in the show tonight. We're gonna put it in the show tomorrow. So you have to like make sure you still remember the old version that we're doing. Oh my God, it's crazy,
fucking insane. But so
I know
your audition process, was it just like an initial appointment for like ensemble? Was it like you're specifically in for the role of Mrs. Puff and covering people?
Yeah. I think it was initially Mrs. Puff. The first thing I think maybe I had read about it or something, but my agent called me and he was just like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your tap? And I was like, oh, I don't know. It's like a 4. How good is your flute playing? I was like, it's like an 8. I'm very good. How good is your this and this and this? And I was like, what are you getting at? And he was like, okay, well, there's this track coming up in the Spongebob musical, and I think you're right for it. So go take a couple of dance classes and brush up on your, dance. And you're going to go in for the ensemble. I was like, okay. The SpongeBob musical, kind of like everybody's reaction. But then I got the sides and, it was very silly and it was really character-y, which I had done a lot of children's theater back at that theater I worked at in Houston. So that's kind of like my wheelhouse. I know how to kind of make quick decisions to make a character work.
Sure.
And distinguish them. So I was like, oh, okay, this is funny. I can do this. And then obviously Mrs. Puff is the one that I was being considered for. So I worked that up too. Yeah. Wait, what was the question?
Yeah. just that. If that was like your initial, like what you were initially considered for.
Yeah, that was my first thing with it. And then I went to that dance call and then I had a final callback and then they picked me. And for a while, even I think throughout most of our pre-Broadway run here in Chicago, I still felt like a little bit of imposter syndrome.
I'm sure.
I felt like, why did they choose me? There could have been I could list you 5 other women who could do this role right now. And I just got lucky. They just happened to pick me. And I think, it's healthy to have a little bit of that, to know, that, that there are other people who are just as talented. And sometimes it is a lot about being at the right place at the right time. But the more I got to know our show and what they were looking for and, the creativity and the attitudes and the people they wanted, I was like, no, I am really right for this. And I did need to be in this. And so, I kind of at the end of it, I sort of embraced it. And then, of course, you still doubt yourself and there's pinch me moments.
Sure.
But it was great.
Wow. And then when they announced that it was going to Broadway, were you all we're all going with the show? From Chicago to New York?
Because originally it was supposed to be immediately after Chicago we were going to go to Broadway.
Oh, okay.
But something happened. Oh, we were supposed to be at the Lund and something happened and the theater fell through, which is why we had to have a year off. And then they offered us the Palace Theater, which they knew was going to be renovated, but they were like, well, it's available now if you want to come in. So we did. And of course, a lot of us were like, oh, they're not going to ask us back. They're going to recast the whole show. Which... almost everybody came back. We had a few new people, which made it better, and it was great. Yeah, and
you had the Tony Awards performance, and
listen, I say this all the time when people ask me about. I concede that it is highly unusual to get to do an original Broadway show, to get to do the Macy's Parade, the Good Morning America, the Today Show, the Tony Awards, The View, everything. I got to check every single thing off my bucket list. And on top of that, it was a great show. I loved doing it. I met some of my best friends in that show. I was proud of it. All of these things never happen. It might be a great show, but everybody's fighting in the wings, or or it's critically panned, and so it doesn't do that well, and you don't get to do all the things. But man, I felt like the luckiest girl, and so honestly, I think it probably made it a little easier when I was deciding to leave New York. That I didn't feel like I was leaving anything on the table.
Sure.
And of course, if the right thing comes along, if Broadway comes calling again, I'll probably go back. But I didn't feel like, oh, if only.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was a real gift, which was nice.
Absolutely. And now it's also immortalized forever because they recorded the show, which is come
on!
That's kind of the cream of the crop right there. That's the dream.
It really was.
It's to have your original track fully recorded.
Yeah. I mean, me and, Into the Woods were the same. The recording that I watched with Joanna Gleason and Bernadette Peters, that's me.
That is you.
Some little kid.
Greens, nothing but greens. Thank you.
Exactly. They're going to be singing along with me to greens, and nothing but greens.
Yes. That is so cool. Well, and then, so you also went on to direct a production of SpongeBob. Is that another like avenue or facet of your artistry that you want to hone in on more?
You know, I'm interested in exploring it a little more. It was quite a daunting task to take on for my first real directorial project, and it was with a theater academy, so it was with kids from about 10 to 18 years old, maybe 12 to 18 for the most part. And the kids were amazing. They were so talented and wonderful. But the SpongeBob musical, for those of you who haven't seen it, there are so many things that go into it. And one of the most unusual and special things about it is the Foley that is written into the show, which is like sound effects in real time. So on Broadway, when Ethan, who played SpongeBob, was like walking left, right, we had the little shoe squeaks that you would hear exactly. Oh, that's a really good impression, actually. Oh. That you would hear if you were watching the cartoon, or like Squidward, same thing, the little whatever he does. And that was really cool. And a lot of those sound effects are written into the script, and there's lines about them, so it's not like you can do it without any Foley effects.
Right.
So that was really complicated. And then, we didn't have the budget that we have on Broadway, so we couldn't do like a huge volcano wall. So you have to get creative, and that's actually what Tina wants. She wrote it in the show notes of the licensed script. She says, "I want you all to get creative. Have the cast come up with what is Mount Humongous? What does it look like?" So I really tried to do that with the kids, and of course, kids are so creative. We did one different thing with Simple Sponge, which was my idea, and it worked really well, I thought. We did shadow puppets instead of the floating sponges. Yeah. And I loved our sponges for Simple Sponge on Broadway, but the shadow puppets worked really well too, and the kids like made them themselves, and that was really fun. So it was cool to be creative. It was so stressful just because so much goes into that show. So I'm not sure if I will do the SpongeBob musical again, but maybe if I have more help or something, right. I'd consider it, because obviously I know the show very well. But yeah, I'm interested in a little bit interested in directing. But I just love performing. I love being a part of the team. I don't feel like I need to be the person calling the shots. In fact, before I booked the SpongeBob musical, I just said, I just want to be in an ensemble. That's all I want. And then I got to do it because I just like being a part of everybody. Yeah. It's really fun.
It's special, and it's something different than, I mean, obviously, Mrs. Puff, you had your moments to come out of the ensemble and shine. But, I even just feel that way about Chicago, because I've never gotten to be in the ensemble. I've only done Ray Sunshine, which is such a pleasure and a joy to do. But
it's so cool.
It's so different than doing the overture and everybody's on stage moving together, and it's just that's so cool.
I know, it's really special.
So you touched on it a little bit, but I am interested to hear a bit more about the eventual closing of the show, because of the construction that was inevitable based on what you guys
we knew it was coming.
Was there always an end date for you guys? Did you always know?
No, we didn't always know. We found out, I want to say June. So we had actually a nice long notice. Maybe it was early July. I want to say we had 2 months notice before we were moving out, and we closed on September 16th. That was 2018. But yeah, we always knew it was kind of inevitable, but they had postponed it a couple of times, so I think we didn't really think about it being a reality of them actually kicking us out. Sure. And when our producer came down and said, all right, we have to leave, we were like, is it the Tonys? Is it because we didn't win enough Tonys? Or is it because this and that? She was like, no, I begged them to let us stay longer. And they gave us like an extra 2 weeks, I think, because they were going to kick us out at Labor Day. But they were like, no, you have to be out after that. So it was sad. And I I was really disappointed, I have to say, because I had in my head when I booked it, I was like, I've never done a Broadway show. I've never done a big national tour. So I want to do 2 years on Broadway, and I want to do 1 year on the tour. And that was kind of like my goal, my little mantra. And so I was really disappointed when it wasn't. We almost hit a year on Broadway. It was close.
Yeah.
But that I wasn't able to do that. And then they decided to make the tour non-union, which was a real disappointment to me because I couldn't do it.
Yep.
And I had really wanted to do the tour as well. So it was sad. But honestly, that was the biggest gift that making that recording of the show was, to me, was closure. Because I wasn't able to finish out my run, or in my mind, or do the tour, I felt like I didn't have that closure that I wanted. So when they asked us back, like the last time I took off my Mrs. Puff costume, I was like, "Bye, girl, see ya."
Bye.
Thank you for your service.
Yes.
I love you. Go with God. It was great. So I was really, really thankful, and now it lives forever, and I don't ever have to, be sad about anything that didn't happen, because it all happened.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hell yeah. And who's to say, what could come next with that show specifically, if there's like a regional production that needs
I think
a
they're
fabulous...
about to do it. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I don't think I'd perform in it anymore.
Oh, no?
I'd maybe consult. No, because now it's like, okay, let the next generation
Let her go.
be Mrs. Puff. I've completed I've ticked all my boxes. But yeah, I think they're doing it in the UK. They're doing a tour.
Oh, nice.
I think maybe it's being mounted right now. I don't know if they'll do a West End production. They might. But then I would assume that they'll, before too long, release the rights for, professional theaters. Mm-hmm. The amateur rights are available now, and schools and community theaters are doing it nonstop. It's everywhere.
Crazy.
It's great. Yeah.
That's so fun, though.
It's great.
So I want to ask you, too, about your experience in and out of the audition room as a full-figured woman. Because, and forgive me, I don't know, which specific language you choose to use in terms of, talking about yourself or whatever, but I'm interested to hear if you've been met with hardships because of the way that you are perceived in an audition room.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember a time in an audition room where I've been, specifically discriminated against that I could think of. But I certainly haven't been called in for very many romantic leads. Uh-huh. And that really sends a message.
It's clear.
Or, or even I would say it was more apparent in college or grad school when you're always cast as the mother or... Right. The funny one, which I am funny, so that's fine. You can cast me as the funny character. But, to feel like you're not even being considered for the ingenue, even when I was 22, or for the, romantic love interest. I don't know. It just, you always feel that, even if no one ever says to you specifically you're not right for that.
Certainly.
But in audition rooms, I think it's really just the omission of what you're right for, or even reading breakdowns. Sometimes I would get frustrated because I'm like, well, I'm only going to get called in for the fat role. Yep. Or, sometimes my agent would send me in for something just if it says plus size. I'm like, okay, I am plus size. That is how I look. But this character is not me. I would never play that part.
Right.
And I've always shied away from the plus size person who hates themselves, who feels sorry about themselves. Even if they have some kind of redemption, I don't know. I just don't like to perpetuate that narrative.
Totally.
And maybe that's true for some people, and they do connect with that, and more power to them, but that's not me.
Right.
So, that's been an ongoing conversation with my agents, and I feel like they're super supportive. And, but you know what? I feel like it has kind of started to turn the corner in the last few years. Bonnie Milligan was in Head Over Heels on Broadway.
Yes. Which I
was
would
the lead.
kill to see you do, by the way.
Oh,
you
yeah.
would
That would be
sing
fun.
the house down, Boots.
Yes, I would. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, so maybe I'll do that someday regionally.
Yeah.
But well, I can't remember their name, but there was a widely advertised production of Beauty and the Beast. I think at the Only Theater.
Oh,
in
yes,
Maine.
yes.
And the person playing Belle was also plus sized, and I think the person playing Beast maybe was disabled in some way.
He was,
remember.
yeah. He had one leg.
Yeah,
Incredible.
that's right. So I was like, okay, directors, we're starting to see outside the box a little bit.
Yes.
That's nice. And then I got called in for a production of Sense and Sensibility for the Emma Thompson role. I was like, what? Excuse me? Yes, of course I can go in for that.
Fierce.
So I was like, okay, this is making me feel good that people are seeing, overweight, plus size people, whatever you want to call it, as real people and not just the funny one, and not just the sidekick.
Well, and I think it's interesting too. You mentioned Bonnie Milligan, and she is a fierce performer and singer and plus size actor. And what's interesting to me about that is that you have a show like Head Over Heels, an original new musical. It was a jukebox musical, but completely like new idea and concept and whatever. And they gave Bonnie the platform to be the leading lady. And so then in productions after the Broadway one, I always wonder, like, okay, so this has sort of set the expectation of like, well, that's the quote unquote plus sized role or whatever. Right. And it's interesting when it's like, it's innovative to have a plus size person play a role that's typically really skinny. Wow, but like, heaven forbid the roles are reversed and like it's based on like who is the best for the role. It's just interesting to think about. And like I talked a little bit about it when I spoke with Bella Coppola. She's playing Jane Seymour right now in Six on Broadway, and she's just fabulous. I got to see her do it, and
she's
stunning and gorgeous and just delicious. And I also got to see her play Pat in Kinky Boots, and I got to see you play Pat in Kinky Boots. So parallels there. But I talked to her a little bit about how my audition experience with Six the musical was the first time that I really felt like I was being taken seriously as a non-binary performer. And so so it's different for sure, but like there are levels of parallels where I'm like, it's about damn time that it's not just you're the funny one or like the joke's on you at the end of the day,
And I feel like I said, I have seen some changes, some directors thinking outside of the box with leads, and even sometimes I'll see a couple of ensemble members that are plus size. I'm like, see, we can dance. Come on.
Period.
Put us in. Yeah, that's another thing I was really proud of about SpongeBob too, is that we had all kinds of body diversity in that cast as well.
Oh yeah. And you were dancing, mama.
Dancing, honey. For the gods. Oh my god, that was a workout and a half. Yeah.
You tap dancing in those pink tights. I live.
Yeah, I've always, for whatever reason, I've been lucky to not really grow up with too much body shame, and I really have to fight what the world tells me about my body, which is that they think it's gross and they don't want to see it. I'm like, no, fuck you. I'm gorgeous.
Fuck that.
And I want to show my body. So even when we did Gypsy last summer and I was having an initial meeting with Dee, our costume designer, I was like, don't feel like you need to cover me up. Like, I'm fine. I'm a stripper.
Period.
So I'm supposed to be showing some skin. So we put me in a little like, for lack of a better word, bikini top or like a tank type thing and a skirt. So I had some little midriff showing.
Yes, you did.
And I felt amazing.
Right.
I looked great
you
too.
Looked so good. And the titties were popping off.
Yes, they were. They were titting, honey.
I was like, yes.
And I also think for me, who is a confident person, I want to make sure and show my body to people so they can be like, oh yeah, there's a person who's confident and not embarrassed about themselves. They are beautiful. I can see that. So then maybe they'll look at the next, plus size person as beautiful and not someone who should be ashamed of themselves.
Yes. Well, and just like the simple matter of it not being a point of conversation. Like, yeah. This is my body. That's your body. Whatever. We're going to tell this story regardless of like the narrative of like being plus sized. I think it's really, it is. We are turning a corner.
Yeah.
With,
I hope so.
Even just like the stereotypical like material that big people are asked to do and portray.
Yeah.
It's no longer, like the breakdown or like the name of the role that you're auditioning for is like fat whoever, we have passed that. That is no longer.
Which I have played that role.
And you cashed your check and you did the job.
I know. I was like, well, I need the money. So.
Well, yeah, but like now it's like, okay, let's move past that. We can cast actors. Yeah. Not.
I really hope that's kind of where it's leading. And of course, it's fine to describe someone that way. People look all different ways.
Of course.
But I really hope that it's not always the fat person who hates themselves and wants to change.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that Mrs. Puff was just such a great example of the fact that like she kind of could have been anybody, but of course like you were the best for her, and so you got to do it. But that's so cool.
I also got to meet Mary Jo Catlett, who is the
oh
voice
my
of Mrs.
God!
Puff.
Did she come to the show?
She came our last week of shows that we were running, and I was starstruck, of course, because I've just been listening to her voice for however many years that I've been working on this role, and she was so sweet and kind, and it was really exciting.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have a little segment that I do now with all of my guests that's like a rapid fire musical theater / lifestyle questionnaire.
Is it a quiz?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a quiz.
Is it trivia? Because I hope I win. Okay.
Did you prepare?
Always. If you stay prepared, you don't have to be prepared. You're going to get prepared. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm going to try to get the best score out of anybody.
Well, it's not trivia. It is like personal questions. So you will just.
Okay, that's fine.
But you'll still win.
You just say rapid fire and I get excited. You know me in game shows.
Oh, I do. Okay, we have to talk about it real quick before we start. Before we start, Abby and I bonded over watching game shows. Family Feud. What's the one?
Always.
America Says. America Knows.
America Says. Yes. It's kind of like Family Feud, but a little bit easier maybe. The people are idiots on that show.
And we would, like, post-show, we would, like, take off our makeup, come home, and we would be sitting in the living room in Aspen.
And screaming at the TV.
Because they were absolute idiots. We were like, what?
I know.
What's not clicking, you fools?
It's building! Come on!
Exactly. Okay. So here is the musical theater rapid fire questionnaire. Are you ready?
Of course.
I asked my last guest, Douglas, if he was ready, and he goes, is that the first question? I was like, okay, fine. Okay, so Sondheim or Andrew Lloyd Webber?
Sondheim, 1000%.
Sweatpants or jeans?
Sweatpants, 1000%.
Correct. Do you have a favorite musical?
I always say Ragtime, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. Gypsy is inching its way up. Into the Woods is inching its way up.
Love. Do you have a least favorite musical?
No shade to Mr. Lloyd Webber, but I'm not a fan of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Neither am I. I think it sucks. Okay. Would you ever like to do a Broadway play?
Oh yeah, of course. I would love it.
Fierce. What style would you like to do?
Oh, drama. I recently finished reading what's it called? Well, this is going well. Clearly it left an impression on me. It's one of these iconic roles. Anyway, wow, Abby. I should Google it because now I feel like an idiot. Well, anyway, it's very meaty, and I really like to get into like super dramatic scenes and just indulge myself.
Ooh.
So I would really get into like a Tennessee Williams or like a August Wilson. I would
love
go
it.
for it.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah.
let's do it together. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl, 1000%.
Me too. What is the craziest thing a director has ever asked you to do?
I mean, I'm sure it's something with Tina. Probably when she made us make up our own sea creatures in rehearsal, and we had a partner, and we had to like come up with the way the sea creature moved across the room. I got my friend Logan hopped on my back, and we were just like this weird like amoebic creature moving across the floor.
I love it.
It's so fun.
Golden Age or contemporary?
Golden Age.
Yeah.
I grew up on them.
Favorite role you've ever played?
Ooh, okay. This is really hard because the favorite experience I've ever... Sorry, this isn't rapid fire anymore. I've slowed down.
Oh, no, you're fine. I launch it as rapid fire, and then I'm like, tell me more.
Okay. My favorite experience of being in a show is certainly SpongeBob. However, I have gotten to play Pat in Kinky Boots a couple of times, and I really connect with Pat. I think Pat is the role that I have played that is most like me as a person. And it's like not that hard of a role because you get a lot of breaks throughout the show. But at the end, you get to dance and look fierce. And
you sing your face off.
Yeah, you get a cute little feature where you get to sing your face off. So yeah, I think Pat is certainly one of my favorite roles I've played.
Love it. I loved getting to see you do it. That was really, really special.
It was so nice that you came.
Favorite costume you've ever worn?
Well, that would definitely be Mrs. Puff. That thing was so comfortable. I had this, like, we called it the underpuff. It's just like a full body, like, spandex situation where I had these striped tights and then this big poofy blue dress with red, like, tulle petticoat underneath it. And it was so comfy, and I looked so cute with my little wig and my pillowbox hat. But then also, like, if I had a big dinner, it didn't matter because I would just be pooching out. I felt fine. I didn't feel like I needed to, like, suck in or, like, feel not bloated. I'm like, no, it's fine if I'm bloated.
I love it.
I have my Mrs. Puff dress on. It's great.
Have you ever missed an entrance?
Yes, I have. Okay, this is a good story. I was in Gypsy at Main State Music Theater back in 2013 playing Mazeppa for the first time, and that was all I had to do. I didn't have to do Miss Cratchit. I didn't have to do a mother. I didn't have to do the dancers at the end. So I actually didn't even have to show up until intermission. That was my like call for the show.
Wow.
So, and my friend Tyler Haynes, hi Tyler, was playing Tulsa. Ugh, talk about a dreamboat.
Girl, I have already like told multiple people on this podcast that I am a slut for Tyler Haynes, but my God.
So dreamy.
Dreamboat.
I know. So anyway, Tulsa doesn't show up in the second act, so he finishes his first act, and then he comes over to our dressing room just to chat with the girls. So I was just sitting there chatting, ready for my entrance, whatever, just staring into Tyler's eyes as he's cute and charming. And then somebody goes, wait, wasn't that? And I was like, oh shit! And I like run upstairs. So I did miss my first. Mazeppa has like one little one-line crossover thing that she's supposed to do.
Oh, yes.
And I missed it. And it was because I was paying too much attention to a cute boy.
And it was because of that hot hunk of man meat, Tyler Haynes.
All his fault. And not mine at all.
Correct. No. Who could blame you? Do you have any pre-show rituals?
Oh, yeah. Rituals. I've actually really gotten pretty good about warming up before the show. Especially if it's a show with lots of dancing in it. I started to have some foot issues when I was doing, well, I think it was before SpongeBob. But I started to get real good about my warm-ups before SpongeBob because we did so much movement. And then I really liked having that time to kind of settle in, take my time. I love showing up to the theater really early and doing my makeup super slowly.
Me too.
Yeah, it just, chatting with everyone in the dressing room. So I love to do that. I've continued the tradition in all the shows I've been in since.
Love it.
Yeah.
What is your dream role?
How long have you got? Mama Rose is definitely a dream role eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm ready to play her yet. I don't think I look old enough yet.
No, you have baby skin.
My baby.
No wrinkles.
Skin. Thank you. But someday I would love to play Mama Rose. I would probably cut off a limb to play any of the roles in Into the Woods. Give me,
of course,
Jack's mother. Give me Little Red. Give me
Baker's wife.
Give me Cinderella. Give me.
I need your Baker's wife.
And the stepsisters. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Give me the witch. I mean, literally any female role, I'll take it.
Correct.
In Into the Woods.
Love.
Mrs. Lovett, of course.
Oh yeah.
I
cannot wait to see this new production. I have got to get my ass there.
Oh, I'm so curious.
My friend Galliana, who I actually met my first summer in Aspen, is making her Broadway debut in the ensemble. So I cannot wait to go and see it.
Amazing. Yeah. So I mean, I also have a couple of roles that I've played that I want to play again, like Madame T in Les Mis.
Oh, yes.
I only got to do it for 2 weeks, and I really got to get back to her at some point. And then in grad school, I was able to do Pennywise in Urinetown. I would love another crack at that one.
Cheers.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, what is one thing that you would tell your younger self?
Oh, I would say, girl, just keep on trucking and work on yourself and work hard because it'll get easier. It was really hard for a while when I was first starting out as a performer. But I'm proud of the way that I stuck to it, and I feel really proud of the career that I've built. So, yeah, I would say you can do it, girl.
Love it. Well, Abby, thank you so much for being on the pod. This was so fun. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you on socials and everything?
Oh, sure. I'm Abby C. Smith on Instagram. Is that all I do? Yeah, I'm not really on Twitter anymore. And Facebook, I don't. I only do Facebook with people that I know in real life.
Oh yeah.
So I am on TikTok, but I don't post anything. So don't follow me on TikTok. Just post your videos, and then I'll watch them and like them.
Yeah, Abby will follow you.
Exactly.
That's how this goes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was such a treat.
Of course.
You guys, that's it for another episode of Oh My Pod, you guys. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe anywhere you listen to the pod, and you can follow the show on Instagram at Oh My Pod, you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Bye!